Hello, this is the Blast Report podcast on all things blasting. My name is Evan Thibaud with New Wave Consulting, and I want to thank all the drill and blast teams along with those supporting them who are out there on the pattern. The production team at Blast Think and I would like to welcome you to today's episode of the Blast Report podcast. Today's guest, we wrangled in Mike Koehler. How are you doing today?
Great.
I really appreciate you being willing to be a part of the podcast here. We're still at ISEE, so we're recording. And you're going to be now, we don't even know what episode we're at, but I think you're our fourth guest on the podcast, and I really appreciate the support.
Sure.
Like we had talked about, I really want to get an origin story. How did you get into the explosives industry? And I want everyone here to kind of, if they haven't met you already, who was a past president of the ISEE, what's kind of your origin story and how you grew all the way from very beginning to becoming the president?
Okay. I grew up next door neighbors with someone who owned a drilling and blasting company and had two boys my age. So I started tagging along and going out riding with their dad to projects and seeing things, and worked with them through high school and college. After college, I went to work for them for 4 years.
Did you, before you went to college, if they owned it and they were next door neighbors, you heard a lot of booms going on in the backyard, or?
No, not really.
Okay.
But they did. They had a farm that, and if they're listening to this, they'll get some chuckles out of it. But
yeah.
we did some booms at the farm where there was another storage site there, so we got rid of the old product. I'll just say that.
That's awesome. And so, do you remember like the first time you heard the air blast coming over from your neighbors? They
didn't really set it off over there. So
I see what you're saying. Yes, a different farm.
Site. Yeah, at this other site. But
were you a pretty young age the first time you got to visit?
Yeah, so very young age. I remember the first time I was on a construction project. I was 8.
8 years old, the first time stepped on. That is amazing.
And I think I was with some guys. I always like to introduce myself from my early starts, assistant stemmer boy turned pro.
That's right.
When you're a kid, you're the stemmer.
I think that's how you should start if you're going to be successful. Everyone says pick up that shovel first.
I had the opportunity to work on drills and drill helper, and worked with a lot of blasters. I couldn't even tell you the exact number, but many blasters. By the time I was 22, when I finished at college, I'd already worked with many different guys. Had the opportunity then with them. They did construction, underground mining, quarries, coal, just a wide variety. So it was a very diverse start and background. I then went to work for, I'll just say it's ETI, but at the time it was DuPont / ETI. They were in the switch over from being purchased. DuPont was from ETI. ETI purchased DuPont at that point in time. And at that point in my career, I was put into a position with a guy named Ed Kennedy, and he was the construction manager for DuPont ETI for the United States. And Ed had then put me with him, and I was covering mostly New England, Pennsylvania at that time. ETI started selling off then. It was a lot of turmoil with purchases and selling. So I went to work for a small company as general manager for 1 year because I wasn't sure what ETI was going to do. I was told to go move one spot, buy a house, and then they called me the day of the closing and said, "Don't buy that house." And so, so you start to wonder, how's my stability here? So I went to work with one of my customers actually, and worked with them for a year, and then they were purchased by Austin Powder Company, the ETI sites in that zone, and I ended up with Austin Powder as technical manager for Eastern United States. Worked with the corporate tech group as well, and ended up in North Carolina, kind of centrally on that East Coast with them, which out of self-defense of having to potentially move again, started my own business.
There you go.
That was 27 years ago. So for the last 27 years, I've had my own consulting firm. In the early days of the company, I did a lot more specialty project blasting and consulting, and then stepped into where now I'm mostly just consulting. I'm not doing really a lot of blasting, although I do run projects. So I'll do a combination where I'll bid the job, be a contractor as far as the coordination of the drilling, blasting, run the whole show for that, and also just consult the companies. I work in mining and construction. So that's how I got to there. The ISEE, I got on board many years ago, and with the group as a whole, and then grew into the board of directors and got on that, and then into the executive board, and
worked your way in. Now, how was it as a small business? Was it quite interesting coming into ISEE as a small business? I mean, you were a member of ISEE prior to starting your company.
Yes. So it's very difficult with your own company because everything is your dime. So
I'm learning that. Yes.
When you have a company backing you, it's so much easier. I'll just say that. So one of the things also, as you move up in the board of directors, which anyone who's self-employed will tell you, not only are you paying your own dime, you're not earning anything while you're gone. So it's very costly. So it's a demanding position to do that, but it's very rewarding as well. So it's a two-edged sword there.
Now, is there some, I guess, coming in and starting when you decided, I want a little bit more stability. I want to be at home. I want to start my own consulting company and blasting company. That's actually something that I've done. I'm in year 3 now. And so when you mention that, I totally understand. So when it comes to the struggles of that, I've noticed that, there is a lot of the very valued and dedicated members of ISEE are small business owners. And you can see them throughout and end up on the board and things like that. What advice do you have when it comes to, first, let's say, how to navigate ISEE as a small business, if you've had to, if you can think on that, and probably, ask on that, or if there's advice that you have towards small business, being small business and consulting, and how, in, let's say, the infant ages of starting your business.
I guess I'll ask for more clarification from you on the ISEE as a small business. Do you mean as becoming a board member, or just maybe networking within the organization, or combination of all the above?
That's a good question. I would think it's a good question to my question. Let's start with the networking aspect of it.
So very beneficial from the networking side. The contacts that you make are, I'll just say, most of the the close friends I've had that I've made for the last 30 years have been industry friends, and they've all become lifelong friends that we still get together, do things outside of work, if you will, but some of it may be work and play combos.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big hunt. I like to hunt, fish, and so some of the things I've done through the years, I did a lot of work with Crazy Horse in my earlier years. They haven't done so much blasting in the last 6 years. That's right, yeah. So they're mostly doing saw cutting right now for some sensitive areas, but years ago did a lot of consulting with them. So much so that I decided to open another office in South Dakota. So I had an office for 4 years in Rapid City also. Wow. Started another drill blast company and had a couple guys that worked for me there. So,
and that's how I met you out the Best yes, in the West time frame.
Sure is.
So when you mentioned the fact Crazy Horse, I applied for a job with them, and but I needed to commit 2 summers as an intern back in college. Okay. And it was one of my goals. I think it'd be one of the coolest things I think I could ever do, is to be part of the Crazy Horse project. And I think there's an entire episode that could be done just on Crazy Horse itself. But I wasn't able to get the job because I was already graduating and I wasn't going to be able to give that second summer.
Yes.
And that's still probably one of the few business regrets that I have. But okay, so you ended up going all the way out there and networking because you became such a good, your friendships and your interests from blasting ended up, extrapolating all the way into what do you do for fun, and then
so a lot of the guys out there we still meet once a year to go on a fly fishing trip. It's just like I said, it turns into lifetime friends, and always enjoy any travels I can do that I can work in a little side trip here and there. That's I think helps you keep your sanity as a business owner and trying to run yourself hard. That's one of the things you have to do as a business owner, and it gives you that break, that little bit of break.
So you have the friendship relationships that you've made, were able to form inside the industry. Do you find that because we're quite a giant bunch of weird and eclectic people who like to blow things up for a living, and not everyone in your, let's say, geographical community that you've built, back home is involved with it, so you can kind of relate to the fact that your life passion is explosives, and there's conversations that you can be had and stories that can be shared with this community inside ISEE that you couldn't share with your, let's say, a church community or another community that you're involved in back home.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's why these friendships last so long. We communicate with each other and literally depend on each other sometimes. I've always been open to trying to help anyone who calls me. So people I've met through the years, I do a lot of training. So when they call, if they have a technical question or an issue, always open to try to help. And I think the colleague side of it, that those that are at, say, the same level of expertise or knowledge or may have a specialty in something that I don't know, it gives you that ability to make a phone call and double check or ask a question. And that's so important for, I think, a lot of blasters are out on the bench, maybe hesitate to ask for that advice or a second opinion. And that's one thing I would tell anyone who's out there blasting, if you have a question or a doubt or just want to talk to someone on a second opinion, make the call. Make some friends that you meet and people that you see, grab some business cards. One thing in this industry, and it's one of the great things I think about the ISEE, is you can come in as year one, new kid on the block, and you can talk to the president of a company, the heads of major blasting or explosives organizations, and everybody wants to help. No, there's no one running the other way and saying, "Oh no, I'm not going to talk to this younger guy." Anybody can talk to anybody, so we're all very open and want to help someone. It's a small community, and we all want to see people coming up to fill our shoes at some point.
Yeah, it's an insanely small community. Somewhat ancestral sometimes, but that's okay. And the friendships there, and then that forms into mentorships as well. Yes. So and that's not just necessarily mentoring in an age wise, but people want to mentor your business progression and foster the business growth too, because they like to be a part of that. Sure. And I think that I very much experienced that starting out as a student years ago, and continuing to grow in the industry myself through different forms, different companies themselves and my own. And would you speak on maybe something when it comes to how to navigate the ISEE itself? Would you so as we're talking in committees and getting in, how to get involved, actually, not just come to the conference and to be a member, right? Because sure, a lot of people can come and be just a blaster, right? And go to the Blasters Weekend, and they don't want to come to the technical sessions. So they only come to the Blasters Weekend, or it's vice versa. There's a lot of people who only come to the conference and not the Blasters Weekend. So can you kind of give some advice on that?
It's, I think, a personal preference thing, but one of the things that gets lost in the mix here a lot is the local chapter. So these local chapters are where I've done a lot of networking and friendships have formed. Also, for many, many years, I've made the circuits from Penn State, Kentucky, Best in the West, and there's others to go to. But there were certain ones I was speaking at every year, Penn State, Potomac, all these certain ones that I would go year after year after year and speak, and you just become, I think, part of the wallpaper. Everyone expects you to be there. They all are, hey, are you coming? And sometimes you can't make it. You got a project, you got this going on or that going on. But for the most part, for decades, I've made that circuit speaking at not only the international, but the chapter. So if someone doesn't have the opportunity to get to the international, they can still get the same effect from a chapter. And if you're at the international, I think it's the Blasters Weekend's great. It's a good time to get continuing ed for your Blasters license. But again, it's making a lot of new friends, a lot of acquaintances. As all conferences, there's a large portion of the learning goes on in the hallway, mm-hmm, or out at dinner, or at the bar at night, and everyone talking. That's where one guy relates his story underground blasting, and another guy's telling a story about something they did in a coal mine, and it's a diversity of people getting together. That's what's good about it.
Well, that's absolutely true. You have the technical sessions, you have the continuing education that happens, and you definitely have the socials and the events that happen after, and that indirect training can't really be quantified. When you're trying to convince someone what is the worth of, now I'm missing my job. There's cost of going to a conference, whether it's a local conference or even the meetings. Sometimes there's like a seasonal meeting that happens in Nashville,
Sure.
and it's only 2 hours away, and you got to kind of justify just going out to that event. Where's the cost and time, and then the cost it's taking from your business, like you mentioned before.
Yes.
But so it's really hard to kind of justify that to someone, especially your own business owner. But if you're a larger company and trying to convince your boss to let you go to that, that's different than when you are the business owner and you value it. The value is meeting and educating in the hallway and talking to those people. I think I've learned a lot of my career there. In that
so
aspect.
one of the things you also do in the career path is meet some interesting characters. And I got a short story about one guy. I was at the time I was trying to work with some old timers, and this was many years ago, and get them to switch from dynamite to blast rate, which was a DuPont ETI product. So the old timers.
Was it a water gel?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a water gel, and they originally had Tovex, and then they got this blast rate, which was a cap sensitive product for. So I'm working with some guys doing trenching and small close-in construction blasting and some larger highway work. And they did not like the product because they trusted and knew dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with this one guy, and I got some stories I'll have to tell you off the air, but there was one with one guy that
a later episode.
Yes, later episode, the midnight special.
That's right. Okay.
So we were. I was traveling with these crews, staying in hotels, traveling around, and I meet this guy named Ernie, and all the crew called him Earthquake Ernie. Maybe not such a good nickname these days, but at the time it was. It fit him well, and it fit him in his past. So I'm out on a job, and I'm trying to get him to switch to this newfangled water gel product, and he looks at me and he said, "You young whippersnappers, you and your highfalutin products and your delay timing detonators." He said, "That interstate you drove in on today, I shot that whole interstate on zeros." So he shot the whole road. He said he would do workload all day and set the shot off, and everything detonated at the same time. It was all on zeros, no timing delay. So that gives you a little insight.
Oh my God.
And
why we have blasting regulations, why there are entire companies at this conference who are paid to do vibration monitoring because of Earthquake Ernie.
Earthquake Ernie. So that's the way it was. And I think it's a little bit humorous on one side where I try to speak to classes today, and I say it's not blasting is not the image that was portrayed in the westerns and the John Wayne movies. And I said that recently at a training class, and every head in the room looked at me like, "Who's John Wayne?"
Oh no, that's right.
And I said, "Okay, Clint Eastwood," and they still didn't know.
Oh no! And then
I said, maybe I'm getting towards retirement.
Actually, I just heard a story from Jerry Wallace about a guy who was meeting John Wayne on a boat, and that's going to be another episode. A blaster himself.
I've heard that.
You've heard that story?
Yeah, I'm from Jerry. So I try to, again, going back to how it used to be. That's why a lot of blasting has a bad name, because there weren't delays used. There weren't design in the blast. It was just load her high, let her fly, let it go.
Load her high, let her fly. Yep, I've heard that.
We're not the Hollywood depiction at this point. We come into town and don't want anyone to know we've been there. So that's our modus operandi at this point. We try to be as quiet and as non-violent with our blasts as
absolutely. Not too many. You wouldn't really be able to earn a nickname called Earthquake Ernie these days, you know?
These days would not fit well. Yeah.
Wow, I could only imagine what fly rock would look like at that level, you know, a full-on construction shot at one delay, you know.
Delay the whole, every hole at the same time. That
makes spectacular blasting videos. I'm sure he wasn't recording any of them at the time back then. No, that didn't exist. But I mean, the video roundup this year, I mean, you can really tell just since I've been in the industry how those videos have progressed, and you know, just the amount of control and technology that's been involved in, and level of details that the blasters have gotten to, the drilling improvements on every level. You can see it in the videos, and you see some of them are quite boring blasts, I would say.
Yes. Anticlimactic.
They're very anticlimactic.
That's what I try to explain. I do a lot of work with companies trying to get permits for quarries, for mining operations, and even construction projects to calm the neighbors. And that's where I can take in some of those anticlimactic videos and say, here's what really happens. It's not the John Wayne effect anymore. It's not rocks coming through your neighborhood. It's very controlled. And it very much calms people. I once was on a job, a construction project, and it was very, very tight quarters in a historic town. And it was all Civil War history, and they happen to have the Historical Society right beside the site that needs shot. And it's sinking down for a new courthouse in this historical town. And you could literally look at multiple homes that were the homes of these historical personnel. One of them, I'll name the town. It was Lexington, Kentucky, or Lexington, Virginia. I'm sorry, Lexington, Virginia.
Okay.
And Stonewall Jackson's house was, you could see it from where I was at the job where we were blasting. I was managing the project, and I went to the Historical Society, who was 2 structures over, and these are all 1700 and even some 1600 structures around us. Gas line in the road, water line in the road, and when we're sinking this deep foundation for this new courthouse. And the head of the Historical Society, he came to me and he said, we knocked on the door and went in. He said, "What are you doing next door?" I said, "We're going to have to blast the rock out." And I just went for public relations to talk to all these neighbors. Most of them were law offices and things like this, the Historical Society. He said, "Son, I'm a retired federal judge. And if you so much as put one stick of dynamite in the ground over there, I'm going to sue you personally." And I said, "Well, sir, I hope I can change your mind. I'll be back, and I'm going to bring some video for you to watch, and I'd like to have some more discussion with you." All right. So we were in the process of getting all the pre-blast surveys done, and he kept looking. I'm like, "You can do all you want for surveys, but you're not going to be doing any blasting here." And so long story short, we get the project finally moving forward. I took them some videos, showed them the anticlimactic. I said, "Sir, this is how it's actually going to be. It's not going to tear your building. It's down. It's not going to even phase this old plaster." I said, here's the vibration limits for historical structures is 0.5 inches per second. It's not going to exceed that level. I'm here to guarantee that. Make sure that happens for you, that this never gets above this. And so he started to come around some, and I said, this is one way to calm a neighbor if you ever get it. And you have to use your best judgment with this. But I asked him to come over and push the button for the first shot.
It's awesome.
He came over. I showed him what we did. I said, "You can come watch us load, see what happens. We'll do a very small blast here, just a few holes to show you what it does." Set the shot off. He set the shot off, and the big smile.
Love.
Oh my goodness, this is all it does.
Yes,
this is all it does. Here's the reading. It's 0.1 at your structure, and this. And next thing we know, he's bringing us over bottles of water in the afternoon to make sure we're not thirsty. And so, what a turnaround! And
what a turnaround
with your neighbors. But those are the kind of situations that hopefully you can 180 someone who's against plasma.
Who's going to go from personally suing you to bringing you some water bottle. There's a woman that was complaining on some blasting to me, and we kept saying we want some of her fried chicken. Like the goal of my project is to fix the relationship so much that at one point she brings us over fried chicken. So in my opinion, I didn't do a good job because I didn't get the fried chicken, but she told us we don't have to come say anything to her anymore. She's like, we know what you're doing. We appreciate you. You don't have to bring that little box out here and put it in our yard. You dug that hole enough, honey, something like that. But well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on to this episode and coming onto the podcast and sharing the story. And I hope that we can have you on again in the future.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Blast Report podcast. I want to thank the team at Blast Think for producing this show, and please follow along for more episodes in the future and share this podcast with your colleagues so we can continue to honor our industry and the people in it. Be safe and have a blast.